So one thing, I'm just going to flag this for you, Russillo. Basketball Reference is one of the great truth tellers of all time. And first noticed this when I was doing my book and I was trying to rank people and really going through the stats, because in some cases you just had the stats and you had like YouTube clips and that was it. But in general, when the points per game and the free throws start going down, and you can look at somebody's career for 10, 12, however many years it is, and you just see that points per game arc going down like it has with Harden, it's usually a terrible red flag. Now, you could say, oh, it's a different situation, whatever. But he has kind of the perfect arc that, like, if you go look at Allen Iverson's Basketball Reference, where it's like he's in the 30s, then he's in the high 20s, and then all of a sudden it's done. Like, that's the dramatic, clearly there's more going on there. This is a more old school, somebody who's just not at the peak of his powers anymore. And you think of all the stuff they gave for him. I think they were expecting somebody who could at least be one of the best 7 players in the league for the next couple of years. Now, if he goes to Philly and it's Simmons and a bunch of picks last year and he's with Embiid, is it a better version of Harden or is it the same? How do you think it plays out? Alternate universe, he's in Philly last year.
I don't know. He got hurt. He got hurt. So now he's automatically healthy in Philadelphia. That's a big assumption. Durant.
But he didn't tear his ACL. He pulled his hammy. And it happened like 8 months ago.
No, so you're saying Harden right now with Philadelphia?
Yeah, I'm saying I wonder if part of it is the situation.
No, because I think Durant's so easy to play with. I think Durant bails these guys out of bad possessions all the time. Clearly, do you feel like Harden's impeding anything Durant's doing? I think everybody around Durant.
I'm just trying to play it out. Like, so do we think this just happens wherever he goes?
Harden.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do. I don't know why there'd be a much better version of him with Philadelphia when he's playing with the best offensive player other than, it depends on what you want with Steph or Durant. But I still think if you need a bucket at the end of a playoff game, you still feel better with a 7-footer with a handle than you do somebody Steph's size. So I don't know.
All right. Have you seen?
Do you know what I'm saying? Like I'm having a hard time understanding. Like, give me your version of it. Then and I'm saying you're wrong, but get me your philosophy on like what it would be with Embiid and why it might be different or a higher ceiling of Harden, because that's where I'm confused.
I think Philly's all-around team is better, and I think it's a better spot for Harden, where there's no, who should take it this time? And obviously he's going to defer to Durant a lot of these times because Durant's the best scoring forward we've ever had in our lives. On the Philly team, it's him and Embiid, but the combo makes more sense to me in my head. And I might be wrong. Maybe it makes more sense.
You might be right, though. You might, then you have a big guard next to Maxey. You have a big guard next to Curry.
Yeah, just like the team for him better. I don't think he would have to play point guard as much. Like, he's basically playing point guard for the Nets, which I think at this point of his career, I don't know if that's awesome either.
But he's basically been a point guard now for a decade.
I get it.
And to be fair, too, maybe Maxey or Curry are involved in one of the trades and the other way going out. Maybe it's an easier slot to kind of fill right in. But, whether it's Claxton not playing, Blake's not playing, Joe Harris isn't playing. They got Cam Thomas out there, the rookie from LSU. Who
they kind of like needed him to create shots. Like, I was shocked by that in the Bulls game. I don't know what their outs are, but I'm guessing the Joe Harris contract or the Kyrie would be if they're trying to get better. But this is also a team that could have signed Dinwiddie last year, right? They could have just kept him.
They could have, but the numbers
they could have given him a contract. Yeah, but at some point, what do you care about the numbers if your numbers are already insane? And it didn't seem like they cared about the money to begin with. But he was an asset they gave away. They gave away Jared Allen as an asset, which kind of turned into a low 20s pick. And they really were pot committed to DeAndre Jordan for some reason, even though he's been done for 3 years. Speaking of that, Lakers. I just don't think it's salvageable. And people are like, you just hate the Lakers. Like,
well, both are true, maybe.
Well, I like rooting against the Lakers.
Second one's definitely true. And what
I sports hate the Lakers.
Right. And what we've been doing here is I've been kind of prepping for my position on however I'm going to counter you on this one. And that is, why don't you just go ahead and do all your Lakers stuff and then I'll follow it up. All right.
I don't really have any Lakers stuff. I think they're They're a slightly above 500 team. The players together make no sense. They didn't make sense as they were being put together, and they don't make sense when you watch them. And I don't really know what the outs are. And then you look at like their spot track, and you look at all the at the salaries, and it's like, what are their moves? It's basically their moves come down to, is somebody going to take Westbrook? And I don't think they'll admit defeat on the Westbrook thing. I actually think, we've seen LeBron get pretty cutthroat with teammates, like he did it in 2018 with Wade, where it's like, Wade, reunion. And then in 3 months, he's like, all right, dude, go back to Miami. So maybe he would get cutthroat with Westbrook. I don't know. But they have no outs. And this is a team that is going to be in the play-in. They'll be in that 7 to 10 range, I think. I think that's where we're headed, because we haven't even had the Davis injury yet. And he's going to get injured with the weight he's carrying. I just don't think he's going to play a full season. He's carrying too much weight.
Of all the things you get right and wrong, which are plenty on both sides of this before we get ready to preview a season, and the Bulls would be a good example of getting something wrong. The one thing that I thought I was as on as anything was, you saw the final signings of all of these guys, and I just go, Vogel's fucked. Vogel's fucked, because you just signed a bunch of guys who aren't just like but they have real personal resumes. Like there's going to be a pridefulness with this group where you're going to have to end up telling a few of these guys, hey, you're not starting, and you're not going to be on the group during the closing minutes, and you might even get some DNPs. So it was going to be tough. Like I was reading some Lakers article the other day. It's like, well, we're still not ready yet because they haven't got Nunn and Ariza back yet. And be like, wait, are you serious? If Nunn and Ariza,
he's more washed up than Jordan is.
And so they just benched Jordan and Bradley, where Bradley had some defensive moments, I thought, at times, but the spacing with those two doesn't work. So now it's Dwight who's back, and then Horton Tucker starting.
Right.
The Westbrook part of this, to be fair, I was like, maybe in the regular season when they need an emotional lift, when the other guys are coasting, when the other guys are missing games, it'll make some sense. It's not going to make any sense in the playoffs. That was being too nice. And I hope Lakers fans see this. Like, this is why you and I talk about this the way that it is. It isn't just about the triple doubles. It's the freelancing on defense that is more costly than just a bad shot. Like, you want to miss the three? All right, whatever. Plenty of guys do that. But when you just decide, I'm going to just kind of go over here for no apparent reason on defense, and you blow these assignments over and over and over again, which is something he's always done, it's a real problem. And it almost makes you unplayable, but you can't do that with Westbrook. And then there's the LeBron piece of this. They're 7-5 with him. Doubting him is basically a career decision. It is a failure for your career decision.
Yeah.
But there are numbers, which you and I have talked about, that are alarming here. He's up to 8.5 3-point attempts per game. He's usually in the 6s. All right.
3 points up, free throws down is not a good recipe for him.
Exactly. Rebounds, second lowest since his rookie season, 5.7. Free throw attempts, 4.8. That's the career low. He's hitting threes at just over 33%. That's the lowest in 5 years. And that's with him playing almost 37 minutes a game, which is the most in the last 5 seasons. Yeah. And I'd say he hasn't ever played, I believe, 4 consecutive games in a row this season, Bill. So, again, it's LeBron, benefit of the doubt, open mind. Let's see everybody actually play. Let's see Vogel get a rotation here in January where he hurts some feelings. But there are little hints that he is finally becoming an older basketball player. And I tell you, there's even moments in a game, I thought in that Clippers game where he had to play center, which is always tough. I don't care who you are, trying to defend the driver and then also worrying about the big man, where he did look a little old, but that could be just conditioning the fact that he hasn't gotten a steady pattern at all. So there's a lot of alarming things about this Lakers thing. They're tough to write off with the two guys, but you're right. They're not going to be ahead of Phoenix, Golden State with Clay back, Utah. Like, those teams are all locked seeding-wise.
Phoenix and Golden State are levitating above everybody else. And then I think Utah is the wild card. I was on Logan and Raj's show yesterday. Mitchell has some moments that make me wonder if there's a jump for him to have as the season goes along, like a little mid-2000s Wade-ish. I know we've made that comparison before, but he does have some, no matter who's on the court, where he has some of these 2-minute stretches where he's just the best basketball player on the court and doesn't seem to matter who else is. And I do value that, especially as we get into the playoffs, because and that's why neither of us are going to count out LeBron, because LeBron will have those moments too. And it'll be like, I don't care who's on the other team. LeBron, he's going to be able to get to the rim if he really wants, and he did add these like crazy 28-foot step backs that he seems like he's making a little more than he used to. I still don't love it, and I don't think ultimately, if I'm a Laker fan, those aren't the shots I would be banking on to try to win playoff series. But the bigger thing to me is just how bad Davis has looked. That some of the Davis stats, now that we have real sample sizes, just how bad of a jump shooter he is this year. And it's like, it's not a 5-game stretch. Now it's like a 20-game stretch where he's just like the worst shooter in the league from 18 feet. That wasn't the guy from 4 years ago. And I think there's some really concerning, if you look at him now versus looking at some of those Pelican peaks, he just looks like a different player 4 years ago, in my opinion. Even though I know the stats are relatively similar, I'm just saying what I see with my eyes.
Yeah, if you go with some of that raw stuff here where you're like, well, what's the problem, guys? It's 25 and 10 again. A couple assists. He's got you a couple blocks and all that. But then Kirk Goldsberry had this stuff on charting his shot attempts. And I mean, I don't think this was an exaggeration, but was he like last out of 98 qualifiers in a certain range? And in a range that he's living in?
Yeah. When what made him special to me was him from 16 to 18 combined with how he could get to the basket. But yeah, it's rough. Now watch, they're playing the Celtics tonight. I'm sure they're going to probably beat the Celtics by 15 now that we've spent time on this. But I don't think they have a lot of outs. And more importantly, I just think the Suns and Warriors, the upside of those two teams and what we've already seen from them. We've talked about this in the past. When you're rolling off like 18 in a row, that's a different level. There's a consistency talent thing going on. And I know it's regular season, but I think both of those teams have the ability to rip off 16 to 18 in a row. I think Milwaukee does too when Milwaukee's healthy again. I could see Milwaukee going on a big, big run. Now, will they even let that happen? Will they start resting guys? Are they conserving guys because they, put on a lot of miles on themselves last year? But I think those three teams, the ceiling of those three teams is really high. And then after that, for me, it drops off. And the Bulls are probably the one kind of wild card team for me. That could they have a ceiling that gets into that group? Because you and I text about this a lot. I think we're both kind of stunned by how good their execution is in the fourth quarters. That's the amazing thing to me with that team. I feel like in a close game, I just like everything they do. I like their shots. I like how they're able to defend in the perimeter. I like the guys they play, and it feels like there's some upside because they haven't gotten Vooch going yet. All right, where do you have the Bulls? Like in big picture in your head?
It's hard for me when it's new, and that's why, I think when you looked at a normal East going in, and the East has been better, I think we just realize it's deeper now. You're like, okay, which of the 8 teams are they going to go ahead and replace? And, every single day of the week, I take Chicago over Boston at this point. Atlanta has really struggled defensively after kind of feeling like they righted the ship and were passable enough defensively last year. The Knicks are a mess. So, it just happens. Every year, you're going to start to have these teams. And like Washington is not the team that we thought. I didn't even think I thought they were that when they had that really good record. Them slipping, I think, is a little bit more predictable than them looking like they're going to be a top 4 seed. So now Chicago knows exactly who they are almost every night, even with, not a perfect situation where they had to play Javonte Green in some tough defensive matchups because they didn't have Patrick Williams. But what I love about it all is I think, there's something to be said of teams that have had players that have done stuff individually, and now you're kind of at that point of your career where you go, like, do you guys just want to play ball and try to win some fucking games here? And there's something to be said of guys being collectively over it. Where Zach LaVine is a terrific player. He's as gifted as anyone athletically right now in the league. But, the shot selection, decision-making, all of it was steadily improving, but not necessarily what you wanted to have. And now LaVine knows I've got 2 other guys I can trust with the ball in their hands to either make a shot or drive it as well. DeRozan, his advanced numbers have gone up 4 straight years from ages 29 to 32. The passing always got better at San Antonio. Now he's making shots, which seems weird. I still don't love a 3-year, $82, $85 million deal for him at the time. But I think Chicago's like, hey, why don't we just go get a guy who we know we can plug in for 20? And then Lonzo, who's just a really great complement with everybody else. And so, Vooch defensively is always going to scare the hell out of me. The rebounding, maybe in a tough, bigger series, is going to scare me a little bit. But this is a team, when I watch them, and Caruso's out, I know, for a little bit here. When I watch them defensively and who they are, it looks like a guard group in their first year, 20-plus games in this, where they all trust each other. I love that when I know I throw on a Bulls game, I'm pretty sure I know what I'm going to get, and it's good.
I have some bad Bulls takes from the last couple months. I don't think I'm alone. I didn't think they'd be good defensively. they are. I didn't think Zach and DeRozan would mesh like they have. They did. The DeRozan thing's interesting, though. I hated the contract. I didn't really understand it.
I still might, by the way, but I've been wrong about what it would be for this year.
Well,
so,
now there's 2 years left, so you could argue the last year's the expiring. It's fine. I think it's a win for them.
It's already a good deal. It's almost over.
You know what? Because I made that, as you know, I make dumb lists just to try to get in my head the perspective of where guys rank and things like that. So if you hear Daryl say, I'm only trading Simmons for one of the best 30 guys in the league. It's like, all right, what's that list look like? And then you make the list and you go, oh, none of those 30 guys are getting traded for Ben Simmons. Every time the team says no. So anyway, you make those lists.
Okay, wait, can I just interrupt? So if you did your hypothetical list of 30 guys, the team on the other end would say no 30 times?
Yeah, you're just making the list.
Really?
It's like Dame Lillard, Donovan Mitchell, Jason Tatum, Devin Booker, Ja Morant, Trae Young. All of a sudden you're at 30 and you're like, all right, which team's going, oh, cool, let's take Ben Simmons, the guy who won't play basketball, for this top 30 asset. But when the Bulls get DeRozan and they have Levine and they have Vucevic, if you're just making a list of who are the top 50 players in the league, those three guys are on it. So in a way, it's like in fantasy, Sal always does this. Sal will spend $60 on Derrick Henry and $65 on Alvin Kamara. And you're like, wow, that's dumb. He only has so much money left. And then you look and he has like 3 of the top 20 guys in fantasy. And then, oh yeah, his team's 8-4. He just kind of figured out the fringes, went all in on these 3 guys. That's kind of the Bulls thing, right? I think Vooch, even though he hasn't played well this year, I think if you're making a list, he's still probably one of the 50 best players in the league. Levine and DeRozan are in the top 30 at this point, the way they're playing. And then Lonzo as like the perfect 4th guy. Perfect. Doesn't care how many points he scores. I think their coach is really good. And, if they can get Williams back, that'll be the big X factor for them. But the team makes way more sense than I thought. I think the Bulls fans really like this team. There's some energy behind the whole situation, where you think like that it's been 7-8 years of just kind of depressing basketball and depressing situations and guys trying to get out and the Thibodeau thing. And now it's just like, all right, here's a fun team for you guys. Enjoy. Here it is.
I'm glad you said that too, because I think that's where you look at a DeRozan and go, okay, cool, fine. We're not getting any of the max guys. Like, we've missed out. Free agency has not been kind to us here in Chicago. So why don't we just do this? Like, we'll pay. And there's probably more teams competing maybe to get that number up to where it was. It felt weird at the time because you just weren't hearing that much about him or anything. And then you're like, wait, you got to do a sign and trade and give up. And then you got to do 3 years on this guy to 85 and he's 32 years old. Like that, how many other teams are in the mix with you on this? But I just think that we don't do a good enough of a job, even though we're aware of it, of reminding ourselves. There are certain franchises just go, all right, fine, cool. I'll take the B- guy,
Right.
Like, we'll take the B- guy.
By the way, the Knicks should have done that. There's a world where the Knicks just have Lonzo and DeRozan as their backcourt. And instead they try to spread money around. And I think the Knicks are in a way worse spot than they were 6 months ago. You just go on down the line with those contracts, like Rose for 13, Kemba for 8, Nerlens Noel for 13, Burks for 10. And it's like they didn't get, there's nobody on that top 60 list at any of those guys. They could have just given DeRozan 3 years, 85, not even done a sign and trade for that. And at least they have DeMar DeRozan, I think it was about.
So you've gone all the way to the other side of this, where you think teams with cap space should have just brought DeRozan in now.
From what we've seen, this is all hindsight, and I'm the one who the DeRozan contract was one of my least favorite of free agency. But in retrospect, if you're a Knicks fan and you're watching the way DeRozan plays, and you also have Rando, who's a little old school in the same way, right? It's like 2-point baskets in the last 7 minutes of a game, like just execution. And DeRozan's like one of the best people in the league at that. And versus what you ended up with, and the Kemba thing made me wonder, like, do you guys have scouts? Like, just ask anyone who followed the Celtics the last 2 years if it's a good idea to sign Kemba at this point when he just has no lift anymore. So the Knicks thing is a tough one because they're now gravitating toward the panic trade. And I think they have to be considered in any Dame thing. But the way RJ kind of took a step back this year, I don't think he could be the centerpiece of it. So I don't even think they're in the mix for that. I think Dame gets traded in the next 6 weeks. I think there's a lot of tea leaves being dropped now. You're not ready to go there?
No, I haven't done enough work on that one specifically. So
I like the answer.
Yeah.
I just think the way it's gone and the fact that you've had these ugly losses already. Maybe McCollum will be the first thing. And there was some McCollum stuff today where I feel bad reading it because he's a good guy. He's been on this podcast, right? Now he's just in the trade machine vortex for weeks on end, where it's just like, that would suck. Like, imagine that's your professional life. You're putting all this time and care into your craft. Your team's not playing that well. And now you're in trade machine vortex. And that's just where you are. And every day is a new fake trade and a new rumor. And that's just what your life is until it happens.
Yeah, I mean, he thought it was bad before. Didn't he get on your case? It was like, you want to trade me all the time, man.
I know.
Did he say that about you?
He did. He said it on this podcast. He was making fun of me about it. But yeah, I mean, that could be like a legitimate blow it up. I don't know. But I think the league is now really rallying around Dame. And, I wouldn't rule out a bunch of teams. I don't want to get the aggregator fires going. But I think there's more teams in a Dame kind of sweepstakes thing than I think people would realize.
Why don't you just lean into the aggregators on this one and go, here are the top 5 teams I'm hearing for as a Lillard match, just to see it happen.
I'm not doing it. It's not worth it anymore. It's not fun to do that anymore. If it was like me and you, I mean, the thing that sucks about doing pods now, if we were just hanging out, shooting the shit, which is what we try to do on a pod, now sometimes you can't do that because things get blown out, which I get. I mean, this is a public podcast. I get it, but I certainly have some inclinations on some ideas, but I'm afraid to throw them out because everybody's so crazy now.
Why don't you do this? Because I know you've been getting real antsy. You sent me a text the other day. You're like, all right, I'm fucking bored. Let's start some trades up. What do you think is, not based on information you've heard, but what do you think the market is for Dame? I just wonder if they'll tell Dame they're going to do everything he wants. They're going to bring in a new person, basketball ops that Billups is aligned with, that Lillard signs off on, the ownership, on and on and on. And that Lillard, because he does like his situation in Portland, the living situation, that it's his team, all these things, but they can change. I mean, hell, LeBron liked being in charge of Cleveland the 2 times that he ran the franchise.
But you say he likes the situation. Everything about that situation has changed except the city he plays in.
Yeah, but
they've changed the GM, they've changed the coach, the owner's changed. A lot of the guys on the team has changed. Like, really, the only thing that's similar about the situation is he's playing with CJ McCollum and Nurkic, I guess, would be the only. Those are the only constants. And the uniforms.
They're terrible on defense again. So, whatever it is, this thing, they tried to fix it around the margins, and it just never worked. And Nurkic's
what would you do if you're the GM? Would you go fringes or we go Dame trade? Because I would actually, Nurkic would be the first one for me. I would try to do a smaller scale Nurkic move. Expiring contract.
The first thing I do is ask Dame what he wants to do and hope I get an honest answer out of it. And
so you would do the Dame lunch?
Oh yeah, that's what you got to do.
Dinner or lunch lunch is a little more low pressure, but dinner is more. This is how much you mean to me. Let's go to a really nice place. Get the back room.
What the fuck am I going to do? Watch the T-Wolves again? I'll make time for dinner. Me? It's not like I'm picking anybody up. So. I think you have to go into that and ask him and hope you get an honest answer and be like, what do you want to do? Because if you're leaning towards you want to go nuclear and force your way out of here, then let's work together on this. But I would be making sure as the new GM that I had no choice in this, that I didn't show up going, hey, let's get rid of Dame, because still having Dame, whatever you think of him as a smaller guard as he ages and some of the terrible shooting numbers that we saw from the season, whatever you think of him, you still have a very important piece to a franchise that's a marketable piece. You're in contention. It's not championship driven or any of those things, but it's still like you're somewhat relevant here. Yeah, somewhat isn't even being nice enough. You're very relevant still as just, hey, we've got the Trailblazers game tonight and all those different things. So if he's still on board of whoever is in charge again of trying to figure this thing out, and seeing if he can be a part of the future, I think that's your first move. Anybody that I think goes in there aggressively is like, I'm just getting a reset button because we don't defend enough. We keep losing to the playoffs without realizing where Dame's head is at with this, I think would be a mistake.
So would you grab Simmons for McCollum?
Yeah, I would have. That deal, Portland would have done that deal with the older management the entire time. That's the deal they wanted to do.